You're listening to the Paul Higgins Show, the place for ambitious tech consultants with purpose. After 18 years as a global sales leader and having a successful tech consulting exit, I'm sharing what's working now to transform emerging tech consultants worldwide into trusted consultants that attract the best clients and deliver measurable results. When you're ready to level up your clarity, results, and freedom, begin with the free Tech Consulting Blueprint available at techconsultantsblueprint.com. Imagine this, you've exhausted your network and you know that you need to get something more than referrals, because referrals are great, but they have a downside, and that's predictability. You want to go into the outbound space, but you get so many spammy messages. You don't want to be like them and hurt your brand. Hello, I'm Paul Higgins, and welcome to episode 505 of the show. In this podcast, we'll explore outbound masterclass. That's right. You're going to really learn what is best practice in doing outbound. So it gives you confidence around your revenue, and your revenue becomes more predictable whilst protecting your brand, and most importantly, saving the most valuable asset you have, which is time. Our guest today is Collin Mitchell. He's a full-time founder, passionate about sales, entrepreneurship, and podcasting. Collin's the VP of Leadium, where they get and help sellers personalize the entire sales process to build more rapport and, most importantly, close more deals. Collin's also the host of a great podcast called Sales Transformation. He started with nothing but managed to grow his business from 0 to 5 million annual recurring revenue in 26 months. Collin has been in sales for 13 years, and he currently manages 5 salespeople, and he gives you a great window into the outbound world. Now, what I'll do is hand you over to Collin Mitchell from Leadium. Great to have you here, Collin.
Hey, thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, well, you've packed in a hell of a lot of experience in those 13 years, but why don't we kick off with who you're currently working with, i.e. who's your ideal client and what problems you solve for them?
Yeah, so I'm currently VP of Sales and Managing Partner over at Leadium, and we help sales teams with 2 problems. Help them fill their funnel via, outbound done for you as a service, or for, people who are getting a lot of inbound leads, we handle their inbound lead management as well. So all, top of funnel solutions there.
Great. And when you say sales teams, is there any particular verticals, industries, size?
Yes and no. So pretty much everything we do is B2B, but everything from, small coaching consulting, all the way up to, large enterprises as well.
Right. And what differs between the smaller end versus the large enterprise? What's the biggest difference you see?
Yeah. So usually there's a couple different things. Larger enterprises typically are looking to solve a very specific thing. Like maybe they're trying to tackle a new market. Maybe they're a large company that had a lot of success and they're trying to break into the US market. Or sometimes they might be trying to launch a new product, or sometimes they might be trying to, get some traction in a very specific vertical that they never have before. And so typically that's when, enterprise type companies would engage with us. Smaller companies, maybe they don't have time to do outbound. Maybe, they'd rather spend their time on sales calls, servicing clients, or they've never done outbound before and they want us to try to help them, build that for them.
Yeah. And look, certainly, we spoke before the show, and most of the audience, i.e. probably you, haven't done a lot of outbound before, relied on referrals. A lot of you are SaaS partners, so the SaaS platforms sent you work, or, like we said, that sort of network. And then they come to a growth ceiling, as I call it. And it's like, okay, I've got to go and do this. And sadly, a lot of people that come to me have been burnt, right? They've just tried someone that, it's like you get so many messages in inbox. One day you say, okay, I'm going to try it. And that message correlates and you go and do it and it doesn't work, right? So tell me what you guys are doing at Leadium that makes a difference, i.e. why does it work with the clients you work with versus, others? And I know we're not going to talk about the others, but specifically, what do you do to make it work?
So a couple things. We try to vet out potential clients. So we're very big on disqualifying. we actually turn away about 60% of our inbound that wants to work with us, because outbound is an acquisition channel. And that's the way you have to think about it. And it doesn't work for everything, is the honest answer. Right. And there's a lot of agencies out there that'll take, anybody who's willing to pay them.
Yes.
And they typically churn through those clients in, every 3 to 6 months. But on the flip side, there's also clients that have unrealistic expectations or don't have a well-oiled sales process, right? So people always think I need more leads, and sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's other things in the process that are broken, right? Maybe you need the right leads. Maybe it's that you actually have enough leads, but you're not working them effectively, right? So you have to kind of unpack that a lot of times. So to answer the question, like, outbound doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And so here at Leadium, we try to do that work on the front end to see, because the last thing we want to do is do our job and book a bunch of meetings for somebody that ultimately never close because their sales process is broken, which ultimately means the campaign as a whole is not ROI positive and we get fired, even though we did a good job. So we try to really make sure that, hey, it's a good fit in that regard. And also, having clear expectations, right? Because the large enterprise that's, even though they have a big brand and maybe they're well known, if they're going into a new market or a new vertical or launching a new product, that doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to be, able to knock it out of the park. And then on the other side of the spectrum, if it's a small, company that's, maybe, never done outbound before, or doesn't really know who they solve problems for best, they have maybe an idea, they haven't really nailed it, then a lot of times, that's something we're helping them figure out, which takes time and has a lot of value, but also means A/B testing a lot of stuff and changing and pivoting and, being strategic and trying and testing new things. So, those are a couple of things that I think are important when considering, hey, should I do outbound? And, how do I have the right expectations?
Yeah. And look, I think that, iteration and testing, I see a lot of people do it for 3 months. It's the first time they've ever done it. They do it for 3 months. They don't get results in the first 3 months because of some of the reasons you mentioned. And then it's like, okay, bang, we're off to someone else. Right. So if you're disqualifying those people, I think that's really smart. You talked about a well-oiled sales process, right? So what are the key fundamentals in a well-oiled sales process? When you're disqualifying people, what are you looking for in that disqualification?
Yeah. So usually it's like, if they don't know their sales numbers, then that's usually like a big red flag, right?
Yeah.
How are you getting leads today? What does that lead volume look like? How many are making it from first call to second call? What is your defined sales process if you have one? And then also, how is that sales process mapped out? Is it, based on, deal stage? Is it based on, calls? Is it based on, different things? Is there, specific exit criteria around, how somebody gets from, stage 1 to stage 2 and so on. So you can kind of get a general sense pretty quickly, just with a few questions, if somebody, one, even has a sales process or they're just winging it, which in a lot of cases, you'd be surprised. A lot of folks are just winging it, and, and when you ask them, what close rates are and stuff, you tend to get these very like generic, round numbers, 20-ish% or, things like that, where, you should know these numbers really well if this is, what you do. And so one, it's like identifying, do they have a sales process? What is their sales math? What would success look like? Also, a lot of times when folks are working off of like, network and warm referrals, those will close at a higher rate.
Yes.
And so having expectations around, hey, these are outbound, these are, we're getting people to raise their hand, to have a conversation, to learn more, that have never heard about you before, may not even know that they have a problem that you can solve for them, right? Those are going to close at a, pretty drastic lower rate than, somebody like Paul saying, hey, I know somebody who could solve that problem for you. They've been doing it for me, and teeing up an intro,
Yes.
which are typically going to close at a very high rate.
Yeah, totally. And, I think, everyone gets to that sort of growth ceiling where, yes, referrals are fantastic, but they're lumpy, they're not consistent, and they're not always controllable, right? So that's why you need to go to the next stage, which is around outbound. But you're right, you've got to have different expectations of that is, of what that is. And look, we do a lot with our clients, and we see in our community of tech consultants doing a lot of LinkedIn. They tend to do email a little less. LinkedIn sort of tends to be the go-to. And I know that you've used AI in the way that you prospect differently to people on LinkedIn. I'd just love for you to briefly explain how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for these types of businesses, LinkedIn makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Building it's a very relationship driven sales process, right? And I think that a lot of people have two minds about LinkedIn, right? Because there's the camp of people that don't use LinkedIn properly,
Yes.
where they just connect and pitch everybody, right? And then there's folks who are, against or for automation. Frankly, I don't care whether you're using automation or not, like doesn't matter. It's more about the strategy and how you're using it, right? Are you using it
Yes.
as a tool to build your network, build relationships and add value, right? And or are you just trying to connect and play a numbers game and yeah, sending as many messages as you can and crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, well, ruining your name, reputation, and everything that's worthwhile and trying to get new business anyway. So yeah, there's a lot of tools that you can use, right? I mean, some of them around, LinkedIn. I mean, a lot of the sequencing tools that folks use today, for email have, LinkedIn parts built in as well. And, so some of those are great. There's a lot of tools that can help, create, you know, uh, opening lines or icebreakers, that are very powerful. And then there's even tools where, you can, get insights about these people or even understand their personality as well.
Right. Let's first go into the ones that are creating opening lines, because I know that the script or the message, however you want to phrase it, is one of the most important things. And you're right. Like, let's all assume here that we're doing relationship selling. We're not just pitching, because you don't. I always said to people, what you don't like is probably what others don't. Right. So I'll get a bit. I'll see the messages that some of my clients are sending. I'm like, would you open that? Would you reply to that? And the answer is no. It's like, well, don't take it from some generic script that someone's, like you said, making money out of selling, just volumes of content without any significant results. Don't be in that game. Be in this specific relationship game, which is why I really like Medium and got you on here. So if we go to these scripts, right, and AI in particular helping us with these scripts, just take us through how that may work.
Yeah. So I think that number one is, this is a crucial step that a lot of people skip. And it's, before you even send any messaging, it's who you're sending the messages to.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't spend enough time on this piece. And it's one of the parts that here at Medium, we spend a tremendous amount of time before we send any messages or even fine tune any messaging before we put anybody into a sequence. And it's the data part of, who are we going to send these messages to? And so a lot of people could do this in a very general, broad way. Well, I can work with, anybody, or I can work with anybody in this industry or any company this size. And you really need to segment that down to a workable, sizable list. And whatever that looks like, maybe it's, specific geography, maybe it's, companies that are hiring for a specific role. Maybe there's certain triggers, like they just, had a round of funding, or they just hired a specific role. Look for some reasons that would make them, more of an ideal prospect for you to reach out to. And once you get that part, nailed, then as much information as you can find out about these people is possible. And you can use AI to do that. You can use ChatGPT or any of the millions of tools that are built on GPT now,
Yes.
around getting intel on these people. What are they talking about on social? Are they active on social? A lot of people send messages to people that aren't even active on social. So I know that you had mentioned a lot of your audience spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, based on the fact of what it is that they do, and that it's a very relationship driven sales process.
Yes.
Well, why would you waste sending a message to somebody who doesn't spend any time on that platform?
Yes.
right? So you can use tools today to find out, is this person active? Like, have they posted in the last 30 days? What did they post about? Things like that. How many times have they posted in the last 30 days, right? So people that are more active on there, you're going to have a higher chance of them even, accepting and responding to a message in the first place. So just target those people if that's the only channel you're sending outbound on.
And are you just
Um,
using Sales Navigator, or are you using additional tools above Sales Navigator that gives you that data?
No, there's other AI tools. There's tools like Clay. There's tools like, even Humantic, who gives you personality, will tell you if they're active or social. I mean, there's just so many of them now. It's hard to not have, sales tech overwhelm, you know, with all of the tools that are coming out that are, built around GPT. And even if you just use like Chat GPT and you have like the premium, like there's a lot of stuff you can do there of really, tailoring a message specific for a person. It can, GPT-4, you can view, websites, and you can do a lot of other things that, you couldn't do before, where it has a lot more capabilities. So the more you know about this person, and you could also do this manually, right? You could spend, 5 minutes or 3 minutes researching a person before you send them a message. Like if your outbound volume does not need to be very high for you to, hit the type of numbers that you need to hit, then, maybe you don't need to have a bunch of tools. Like you can spend 5 minutes. That's the way I used to do it before a lot of these tools became available. I
Yes.
would never do it that way today
Yes.
because it's a royal waste of time for me. But you don't need to have the tools to pull this off either.
Yeah. And the great thing with, like you said, with 4 now, I think it's, it's 20 US a month to get ChatGPT 4. Like, it's hugely inexpensive for the value and the time that you save. So I think that's brilliant. Now, you mentioned Humantic AI, which I know you worked there for a period. And from, I've used the tool briefly, but it seems to be around, someone's disc profile, and you
Yeah.
based on their personality. Just give us a little bit of a snapshot of how you may use a tool like Humantic AI.
Yeah, so there's a few tools, similar to Humantic. I was the head of sales there for a while. Crystal Nose is one that's been around a little bit longer, and there's a few others that have popped up. A couple that are like more enterprise, but it allows you to understand the personality of these people. Now, you could also hack this together, using GPT by visiting people's profiles and seeing their communication styles and how they structure things. But ultimately, it's to identify their personality type, which means what they care about, what they don't, and how you should communicate. So an example of that would be, a dominant type personality. That's somebody you need to get straight to the point. So short messaging, straight to the point, and align with their goals. That's all they care about. So your messaging should be focused on that. A more, relationship driven person, opening line, rapport, right? So for example of that, when you hop on a Zoom with them, you might ask them how their weekend is, how their day, you might see some in their background, stuff like that, right? Well, even in your opening line of your messaging, right? You might use some intel or some research that you found, saw a post that they put out, saw a podcast that they were on, right? You would use that with those type of people. Where more of a dominant personality, like it's a nice, maybe it's nice, but like they literally don't care about that. If you can't be straight to the point and show them how you're going to align with goals that that they have, it's going to get ignored, right? And then everybody's telling us that all of the messages need to be shorter, which is true for the most part. But, with more of a calculative type of personality, these people, they're the type of people who want to know how the sausage is made. So that means more detail, longer email, explanation, right? They're a little bit, their risk tolerance is much lower. So you need to explain things to them thoroughly. So those are a few examples, and you can incorporate that, knowing this about these people, into the messaging.
Yeah, and I think, the biggest example I see is, people loving their technology. So let's say you're a Salesforce partner, HubSpot partner, whatever, and you love the detail and you're a high CNS because you typically, more left brain, you've come from a technical background and you love your product to death. Now, talking to a business owner that's a high D in the way that you would normally talk to you and your team is going to be, instant dismissal, right? Like, you're not going to get through. So that's where I think using these AI tools and, like you said, whatever ones you use, but incorporating them into your process. So you're making sure that you're just not talking how you would normally talk, right? You're tailoring your messages to the intended audience. I think that's the most critical thing. And you do a lot of if we just focus on LinkedIn for one more moment, you do a lot of this. Like, there's people always talking about too much noise, and we've been talking about too much email noise for ever since emails come out, right? But are you seeing any significant change in open rates and reply rates in the the last 12 months compared
Oh,
to beforehand?
absolutely. They're getting more and more difficult for everybody.
Yeah.
And part of it is because, the rise of sales automation tools, um, because how much data is, increasingly accessible. You can find people's emails and direct dials a lot easier than you could before. So, but I would say the biggest hurdle that most people face is just getting their message in the inbox and not in the spam folder.
Yeah.
And that's, there's a few, critical things without getting too technical about this. But number one, like, a lot of people don't even have their domain set up properly, right? So proper like SPF and DKIM records.
Yeah.
A lot of people end up sending emails from their primary domain, which is a big no-no because ultimately, just a few spam complaints, and then you're going to have challenges with deliverability, not just with your cold messages, but with every email that you send, even your important proposals, calendar invites, you name it. And so the spam filters have gotten, more and more difficult to get around. And so that's the biggest challenge everybody's facing. So having your domain set up properly, not using your primary domain. And then it's even possible now to identify, if Paul uses Gmail or Office 365. And so you can, send from an Office 365 mailbox to an Office 365 mailbox and a Gmail to Gmail, and that's going to help. And then a couple other things, but like sending a lot of the same messages is a problem. So the more personalized your messages, and you can do this with AI, you can do this manually, whatever the case is. If you're trying to do it at scale, then you definitely need like some AI tools. But having variations of messages that are going out. And then the main thing is you can't just get a new domain and like start just firing emails, right? You've got to like scale and warm that volume and try to monitor and maintain your domain reputation. So it's a lot, just to set it up, manage it, and maintain it so that you're even just getting in the inbox. That's not even talking about, well, are you even targeting the right person? Is your message even any good? Like, there's still, things that we haven't even gone into. That's just to get in the inbox.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's really important. Like, if you've got some experience, you've got some sales training in your background, you may have some sales experience, and you want to go ahead and do this, that's okay. But I think, you also seriously got to look at the fact that this is moving so fast. The AI tools are changing so often that, maybe you want to get someone that's all they do, right? Because you've already got your workload full with the technology piece as it is, because let's face it, implementing technology change and people change is never easy. So that's already complicated. And then you go into a whole new field. So, that's why I think it's really important to make sure you're assessing different options. And if someone is actually really questioning you, if you're the right client, you're probably going to have better success. Like Lidium and Collin said, he's really pre-qualifying his clients to make sure he gets success. If you're talking to a company and they're not doing that, typically just a churn and burn type firm. So just be really careful of that. Just quickly, the last question here before we go to the rapid fire is, a lot of my clients are looking for who's using a software. So they might be a Zoho partner, they might be a Salesforce partner. I want to know if someone's using that tool. Do you know of any platforms that help you identify what tool someone's actually using?
Yeah. So Built With is a great platform. At Lidium, we have an API into their system, and it's a data tool that we use. It's one of the best ones for identifying technologies, web technologies that people are using. And you can buy data sets, you can leverage their API. There's a lot of different ways that you can use it, or a lot of the data tools, like the Zoom Infos and the Seamless and the Paulos and stuff. They have, a lot of that, technology piece, built into their product as well.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing with that Built With is, I think, as a general rule, it's nearly like $300 US a month. So you've got to have some volume and making sure you're getting a really good ROI. Whereas a tool like Polo, which we use, Apollo.io, I find that that's a little more affordable to get to that. But yeah, I think that's some good tools and good recommendations. So now we're going to go to the rapid fire. You ready for 4 questions that you're going to give rapid responses to?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, great. So the first one is, what are some of the daily sales habits you do in your role at Ledium?
Focus on RGAs, revenue generating activities. So that could be advancing pipeline or creating new pipeline.
Yep, brilliant. And the next is, I know that you've got a podcast, which is the Sales Transformation Podcast, which I listen to get great insights. But what do you listen to get insights to become better at your job and your business?
I love podcasts, but lately I've been really into audiobooks.
Yeah.
So right now I'm listening to The Jolt Effect.
Right. And we had the founder of the Jolt Effect, or one of the authors of the Jolt Effect, on the podcast. So I'll put in the show notes who that is, but he was fantastic. The next one is, if I could grant you one wish for your role at Ledium, what would that be?
To only send me qualified inbound leads.
Yes.
It would save me the hassle of disqualifying so many people.
Yeah, don't we all? And
it's a full-time job disqualifying folks, you know.
But
and,
like
and look, if you're listening and you're like, wow, you know, you should be disqualifying people. It's a powerful thing, and it's going to allow you to focus on the people that you can serve best. And you know, it's and disqualifying early is, you know, a skill that you should master, and it's definitely worth it, because the last thing you want to do is be spinning your wheels with, you know, a deal you shouldn't have been working on in the first place, or even signing a deal that's not a good deal.
Yeah, or spending all your time following up on something that was never going to happen in the first place, right? That's all.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing you've got is time, and that's valuable time that you're wasting. So I totally agree. The last one is, you know, you've been in sales for 13 years now. You worked in 22 experiences that you've got on LinkedIn, which is wonderful. You know, what's one thing you know now that you wish you had have known earlier?
I think, you know, investing in your personal brand. It's something I didn't take that seriously early on in entrepreneurship. You know, I just, everything I did was just kind of brute force sales, you know, and there really is a power in, you know, building your brand and your reputation. And I think that, you know, focusing on that earlier on, you know, would have been great. I'm glad I do it now, but you know, if you're somebody who doesn't pay a lot of attention or put a lot of effort into, you know, building and growing your personal brand, trust me, it's worth it, and it does pay off, but it also does take time and patience.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. So you've been listening to Collin Mitchell from Ledium, episode 505. And as I said, check out his daily podcast. So there's a new series coming out, but the Sales Transformation Podcast. You can find it on whatever you listen to. I prefer Pocket Cast as and I found it on there, and that normally is harder to find, so you'll find it everywhere else. Great graphics as well, which is great. And also he's got a book coming out called Outbound Sales Simplified, which is what we all need. You've got a bit of a dose of that today, but follow up with Collin to get more of that. So Collin, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, and really appreciate it. Look, it's a great podcast, and it's a lot of work to put on a good show. So anybody who's listening, you know, make sure you share the show with your friends and write a good, honest review.
Hey, spoken like a great podcaster. Thanks, Collin. That was a great interview with Collin. I love the fact that, yes, we all know about AI, but he gave some great examples of doing it. That disqualification is so important. You know, he mentioned it multiple times, and it's really important for you. And you get a good company like Ledium to do the outbound for you. They're going to be really precious around that. And overall, you know, whatever you learned from Collin, why don't you share it on socials, in particular on LinkedIn? He'll love you for that. Also, as he said at the end, share it with your peers, right? Because there's real gold here. So why don't you share it with them? They'll think you're a rock star. Also, check out our solo shows, and see you next time on the show for more quick and simple ways to grow your tech consulting business and live more of the life you want right now. Time for action. Subscribe, comment, and let me know what you like best about this episode. Plus, get your exclusive show extras and growth action guides for subscribers only. Visit techconsultantsblueprint.com.